Welcome to tonight's podcast. We are joined by the wonderful AMY Thurman, right? I said that right? Didn't goof that up? I just kill people's
That's
names.
right.
All right, cool.
You
So,
got it.
uh, Amy, welcome to the show. Tonight's topic is D&D burnout and various other systems to try. So we're going to kind of hit both of those things kind of in order. D&D burnout itself or just burnout in general. And then we'll get on to the different systems and all the other fun stuff that you can do. We will be joined by a couple other guests as soon as they accept their thing to talk and whatnot, but they'll get in here. Um, Otherwise, it's just gonna be lots of fun. If you guys didn't see this week, I had an interview with Amy earlier. That was Wednesday, right?
I think so. I
Okay.
don't even know what day it is today. Yes, it
It's
was Wednesday. That's
Friday.
right. Yeah.
It's the
Right.
weekend. Woo!
Oh.
Not weird. RJ, why don't you just drop out of the chat and then come back and we'll go back there. Paradox says in our Twitch chat, lots more systems fun than D&D. This is true. There is lots of fun stuff. All right, he's back and invite to speak. See if that worked this time. Anyway, technical issues out the way. He'll get in here in a minute, unless it's being a butt.
That's life, right?
Yeah, there we go. I clicked the thing. Should let him do the stuff. Maybe. Anyway, we'll keep trying this in the corner because it's being a butt for some reason for him today. So let's talk about burnout or D&D burnout in general. So lots of people play D&D. It's the system they learned on. It's the system they grew up with. It's the popular system that everyone knows about it. It's been made into movies. It has references and other stuff. It is the go-to. Dungeons and Dragons. When you think tabletop role-playing games, that's your go-to 99% of the time. Now, obviously, there's competitors, and they're not the only thing out there. So there's at least choices nowadays. But sometimes when you play a system for years at a time, you can have burnout, right? Just like doing anything else, playing the same thing for years on end can get tiring, even if it is unique and exciting every time you play. A great example being, we'll say Minecraft, going back into the video games realms of things. You know, you can play Minecraft for years, but you know, sometimes you just need a break for a while to do something else. Let your creative juices reset. And that's just as true for D&D. So,
Hi. Can I ask a question?
yeah, of course.
I'm not real familiar. My son plays D&D, so I know
Mm-hmm.
from that aspect, but personally, I haven't. But I'm assuming that it could probably go on forever. Like, can it be like an endless type thing
Yes.
where you could have endless possibilities that
Yes,
could be happening?
very, very much so. So most TTRPGs, right, don't necessarily have an ending. They'll have a beginning, and all things end mostly to scheduling conflicts. But in all honesty, you could play a game or a storyline or live in a quote unquote other world for your entirety of your life, right, as an adult. I think the longest running game currently is 40 years with the
Oh
same
my word.
group of people, or at least the same DM running the same world. Um, Someone look up that guy's name. But yes, so there is an infinite possibility because it's just collaborative storytelling. So as long as there are stories to be told, you can continue playing, and you can play once a week, once a month, once every 2 years. So you hit Christmas every year. Unfortunately, RJ is going to just be watching. I don't know why it's being a butt. I'll send one more invite to speaker and see if that helps. But if not, no worries. We can always try again later. Um, so with that, that's how that works, right? It's storytelling. You have stats. You build your characters, and sometimes when you're telling a story, characters die, so you build a new one, or they reach the max level, and you go, "I'm done playing this character. He's going to be a background character now," and then you restart with a new one, right? And we call that generational play. And you know, for groups that are together all the time, again, those people that meet up every Thursday night to play their games at someone's house or online or whatever, uh, that option is up there. But that can be tiring, even especially for DMs or GMs who are doing the storytelling and all the background noise that isn't just character stuff. And then they're also doing their own character stuff because NPCs are characters without the storylines, and sometimes they have storylines. You know, whatever. Um, so
But
to deal
that's
with.
what I wondered.
Mhm.
I apologize for interrupting.
No, no, no.
That because my brain is like, oh, I have so many questions about this. Like it could probably get tiring because you're constantly having to come up with new things, um, and like the master person, whatever he's called.
Dungeon Master, Game Master,
Um,
depending on the TTRPG.
yeah, yeah, I would think that they would probably get more tired because don't they have more involvement in the game? Like
Uh,
they're pretty much always involved.
yes and no. So some DMs alleviate those issues by doing modules, so they take a lot of the building work out of it, um, and just either steal bits and pieces they like from the story, or they run the stories that are official for like Wizards of the Coast or third party publishers that have everything laid out. So they're basically just reading through a story and then reacting to however their players do to railroad them into whatever the next segment is. And
I see.
it's still a
Okay.
lot of work, but it can be less
Yeah.
involved if you want it to be. But some people just keep going forever and do things all the time. But that's not an
But it's a
everybody thing.
commitment. Like you can't just like it's definitely a commitment, I would think.
It is. It definitely is. You know, time commitment, energy commitment. You know, it's a lot to think about being a person in another body, right? To pretend to be someone else and have their thoughts, feelings, emotions, especially if they differ greatly from your own. But trying to jump us back into the burnout. Let's talk about general life burnout. Can you going to you as a question? Can you give me some examples in your life that you've had some major burnout with? Actually,
Oh
before
goodness.
we get too much farther, I am so sorry. What we were supposed to start with before I got on this tangent was telling everyone who you are. So go ahead and I'm going to give you a couple minutes, tell who you are, hype your stuff up a little bit, all that fun stuff. I know who you are, so I got excited. My apologies.
Oh, okay, sure. I'm Amy Thurman. I live with a broken neck. In 2014, I passed out and landed on my face on the hardwood floor, and the impact sheared my brainstem, caused a traumatic brain injury, and it broke my neck. But that went undetected for 6 months, and so it was 9 months before I could have surgery to repair it, and it was just too damaged. And so I continued to live with a broken neck, and I can only hold my head up for a few hours at a time, have to rest a lot. I was working at a major university, doing all the things for everyone, and then the very next day, I couldn't even take care of myself. And so I spent almost a year flat in a bed for 23 hours a day, not even being able to take myself to the restroom after having gone through doing everything for everyone. And so I was in a deep, dark place, tried to die, literally, and decided that maybe the answer wasn't dying. Maybe the answer was fighting instead. And so I chose to go from fighting to die to fighting to live, with the intention of using my story to help other people. And so now I help other people rewrite their life stories, to help fight back from things that incapacitate them. Mine was a broken neck. Other people is have an unfulfilling job, an unfulfilling relationship. Maybe they aren't withholding boundaries like they should. Anything that incapacitates them, I help them rewrite their life story to be able to overcome that and live the life that they want to live instead. So that's pretty much what I do and who I am.
Awesome. Now, before we get too much farther, you have your own podcast. Go ahead and give us a little bit of details on this. We'll recover this at the end so you can kind of talk about it some more. But quickly, what else do you do? How
Yeah,
do you do what you do?
sure, sure. My business is called Polish the Mirror, and I focus on 100 emotions, categorized into 10 stages. But I'm doing right now, I'm going through each of the 100 emotions, 100 days, 100 emotions. And those are hashtag 100 days, 100 emotions, the number 100 on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube if you would like to hop in to see any of those.
And she does them live, just like us. Like I said earlier in our conversation, I was in this the other day. We covered curiosity. Lots of fun. They're not super long. They're only a half hour, so definitely worth listening to at a minimum. So back to burnout. I think you're an excellent guest to talk about D&D burnout, especially with your story. So, what are some big time burnouts for you? Um, if you whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Yeah, of course. Like I mentioned, I was working at the university, all the things. Like I was literally working so many hours. At a university, you don't get paid a lot, but you have to work a lot, kind of, opposite. But I was helping schools and communities learn to work more effectively together and helping show students life beyond high school. So I was preparing all kinds of trips for them to take to tour universities and just to see what life was like, what their options could be outside of high school. And so I was working with all of these people, administrators and counselors and teachers and parents and students, all the time. And I was helping other people's children and not my own. My own were sitting at home with my husband while I was out helping other people's children. And it just got to the point where I was just like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm seeing other people's children so much more than I am myself, and just realized something had to be done. And so I started applying for other jobs, but that's when I passed out, and that's when the accident happened, was during that time. But yeah, I was so burned out because I was feel like I was burning the candle at both ends, and I was enjoying it, like it was providing me some value. I felt valuable, but it was just so much. I just couldn't keep up. My body I just couldn't do it.
That's a lot. I mean, it sounds like you were forced to switch gears, right? Kind of. I don't want to say naturally, but that's the word I'm going to use. Um,
Yeah.
so with your extended break and overcoming that disability, what did you do to kind of push yourself forward in that state of uh, how you were feeling in that point? I mean, extreme example versus us playing games and having fun comparatively to where you're at, but it still relates. You know, the feelings are still there; they're still the same. How did you push forward? What was the main motivation beside from switching from the I want to die to I want to live?
It was just that little slimmer of hope that I just thought maybe this isn't the answer, and of course I was felt like such a burden to my family because they literally had to do everything for me. I couldn't even take myself to the restroom. My daughter was a senior in high school, my son was a freshman in high school, and my little guy was 4 years old. And I literally missed that entire year of their lives. And so I thought, they don't deserve this. They don't deserve for me to be this burden. And it was, my son, he's 4. He would come in and lay in the bed with me, want to color, want to read or whatever. I couldn't even see straight, so I couldn't read anything. But I think it was just like I couldn't give up on them. Like I just couldn't, even though I didn't want to be that burden to them, I just could not leave them because I knew what that would do to them. And so I knew that I had to change the way I was thinking because it was so negative. I was just thinking, I want my life back. I want to do something I could do before. I just want something to be different. And I realized I could never get better with that mindset. And so I had someone load up a podcast or an audiobook for me and put earbuds in real, real low so I could handle it. And I started listening to Tony Robbins and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Rumi and lots of luminaries, and just began to pour in positive inside instead of the negative. And that really, really gave me the willpower to want to make a difference and to want to get better so that I could make a difference. And it's, the story continues on from there, years worth, but that's where it all started.
Wow, that's a lot, and it's fantastic. And I'm going to tweak what you said and kind of spin it for TTRPGs. So
Yeah.
I got a couple points to focus on because you bring up some really good topics on just burnout in general. But the feeling like uh, a weigh down on your family or friends, right? So lots of D&D people, whether they be players or GMs, feel that way in a similar fashion, right? They get really negative about how they're creating things or how their character is built or things like that, right? Um, and I think the answer is very much like you said: be positive about stuff, right? And that'll fix the thing, right, for that game specifically. But sometimes, right, you just don't mesh with what you're doing, right? Sometimes D&D is not your system, or at least you need to take a break from it, just like you need to take a break from video games or doing the things that you love because you'll stop loving them eventually. Uh, that kind of stuff. Take a break, switch gears, do something new, learn something, right? The best part about picking up one of these different types of TTRPGs is that they let you teach something different, right? The idea might be the same, the role play might be similar, but there is enough of a difference that you're going to be learning and expanding and growing comparatively to staying where you're at. And that is a major influence on burnout, because if you're just stuck where you are, just doing the same old thing forever and ever, you're going to get negative. You're going to cast down on yourself. You won't feel like you're improving. So, picking up one of these other things and jumping forward with it is a really easy way to stay positive, or create positivity because you're feeling like you're accomplishing something by learning this new stuff. And this goes for players and GMs on both sides. Learning how to play as a player is just as hard as learning, well, sometimes depends on the game. Uh, Learning how to play as a GM, right? Storytelling can be hard, right? On both sides of it. Being able to play the characters and understand what you're doing, so you're not being a quote unquote burden on the people you're playing with, uh,
Mm.
can be difficult. And I think that's a strong message, right? A strong way to push forward with that. Um, Again, I feel kind of silly comparatively to taking your story and throwing that on games and whatnot, but I think it's still applicable in a modicum of a way,
Yeah, absolutely.
small stomp. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, 10 seconds. I have an important message to answer, but um,
Yeah, okay.
with that being said, we're gonna start shifting gears to the different types of games that you can play. Now, I'm gonna flip it to you for a second, and what you already asked a question about D&D itself, but give me a couple others that I can answer for you to kind of illuminate what the heck we're talking about. Because again, you don't have much experience, so I'm happy to enlighten you best I can, so you have a frame of reference.
Yeah, awesome. I have asked my son this, and so I know a little bit, but can definitely learn more about it. You create the characters, and then you have, and this is what intrigues me the most. And this is what I told him why I don't play with him, because I said one of us has to be the game master, and I feel like I can't do that. Like I don't know how to come up with these scenarios. I don't know how to figure out what's going to happen next, and so. I'm really curious, like, how do they do that? I know you said they have like series of books that they can use, but some of these guys, do they just come up with this off the top of their heads? Like, are they that creative?
I would like to say yes. I mean, for me personally, yes. That's how I do things. Most of the stuff is off the top of my head. Now, mind you, I do steal stuff from topical references from books, from modules themselves. You know what I mean? The stats and things for a lot of items I take from other items, or just take said items from the official stuff so people can find it later. That kind of stuff. So I don't do everything in most of the systems, but there's lots of stuff I craft from the stories and whatnot. Uh, Lots of it is from scratch, and some of it ends up being silly. You know what I mean? Like calling a dwarf Dwarfy Face McGee, right? That's his official name of the game. I'm being lazy at that point, but it's funny and everyone enjoys those kind of things. Sometimes, I try not to do that kind of thing too often, but that's just an example. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can just pull stuff out of the ether and go as you go. Epic Sages itself is a great example of the improv style of jamming, because we encourage people to play like that. We don't discourage people using modules or things like that, but we encourage the improv style, so it's more adaptive and longer tier games and that kind of thing. Because some people really like that, some people don't. That's where our niche in our own market is, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, next
Now,
question.
don't y'all do a certification program
Yes, we do
for
do
that?
yeah. We do certifications, and it's really easy how we do it, because it's literally just playing with us until you're good enough to do it on your own, right? So you play
Okay.
it's play at least one game, right? Gets you certified at a basic levels, because you're like, I know the system, I have the basics, I've rolled dice and understand what I'm supposed to use for it. And then we have tests set up for the stuff that we certify, and it's just I think all of them are about 100 questions each or so, for each system. And then when you get rated on that, if you pass that, cool beans, you're a level 2, right? And that just means you understand the system on a fundamental level of whichever system you're trying to learn, and or TTRPGs in general. And then the third one is you run a game for us. We sit in as people in your game, go through various scenarios. Depending on the system, we let you build it from scratch, or we have a module pre-built for you that we kind of want you to run. It just depends on what system we're running and what we're teaching and whatnot. But if you pass that, then you're a master, which is one step below us grandmasters for me and younger, and we, you know, you're basically part of the family at that point. I mean, if you're a master level person in the server, you're basically good enough to have a job with us.
Oh, cool. Wow. That sounds fun. Do you have more adults or more kids that you go through your program?
Oh, definitely more adults. It's meant for adults. So we don't really sell to
Okay.
kids. We sell to families, right? We encourage you to play with your kids and have fun and whatnot. But we're really trying to target the adults because that's who needs this more or less. Kids are always going to be imaginative and have fun, and will have outlets to do those creative things. Not that this isn't a great one for it, but they'll find something somewhere. Whereas having the adults with them that are doing things and experience it with it at the same time, way more important for them. Um,
So
at least for us
true.
as a
So true
company.
because yeah, I mean, we think as we get older, I think you and I even talked about this on my series that as we get older, we tend to lose some of that. Like just what you said, the kids seemed more creative, more able to kind of come up with that kind of stuff. And as we get older, we kind of lose that, I think. The ability to think like that.
Well, and you know what? And sometimes it's just lack of time. I mean, for a lot of adults, they are very creative in their own rights, right? Which is where we as a company step in. Haha. I know this sounds like a big old pitch for us, but whatever. Uh,
No,
but
I'm just curious, really. I am.
that's where we step in and do all the hard work. We do the GMing, and you can just focus on being creative and having fun with the character as you run through stories and maps and all that fun stuff and do your stuff. And as a bonus, if you're playing with your kids, nephews, cousins, other significant others, you get to let them see other sides of you that you might not normally let out in front of people. You know what I mean? Whether that's intentional or not, it's a really good way to bond and see people on a deeper level than you know them normally. And it might just be funny to always see something like my mother rolls twos. That's her thing. Uh, we know if we give her dice, she's rolling twos. That's a thing we learned in D&D.
Wow.
Don't take her to the craps table. She rolls twos there too. Um,
Funny.
but uh, she's also really good at performance roles for some reason. Again, just funny in the stories that we've learned. But if her character decides to perform something, it does amazing, and then all of her other roles are twos. Hilarious. And you can see how
Oh
she
my
reacted
goodness.
positively and negative from those interactions, and see how she deals with failures or sees how she deals with successes, that kind of stuff, which is just as important for most children and adults, because you then get to see your children do the same thing, see how they're taking failure, see how they're doing success, and visualizing what the heck their understanding of those two concepts are and how they would handle it. Because how they handle it at the table is probably very similar to how they handle it IRL. Maybe a little different, but generally not. It's pretty close. Um, but
Yeah, that's
another way
good.
to test
That's
that,
good.
right? Going back into our burnout, because again, telling those stories with kids can take forever and whatnot. Uh,
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the other systems besides D&D to get those reactions and pull things out of uh, the hat, we'll say. And I got a fun little list. I'm gonna look through and pull up, and I have a couple on the Twitch chat from Paradox. So he talks about World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, Degens, Rifts, and the Old Gods of the Apache, and he's talked to me about all these at this point at various other stuff. So he's more of an expert on those ones than I am by far. So I think I have a description for one of those though. Let me see here. I do not, unfortunately. All those are fantastic systems that are definitely more. What's the right way to put this? Intense than we'll say our typical D&D session. The stakes are always higher in those sessions, and some of them, like World of Darkness, and I think Degens is way more focused on the roleplay aspect of things comparatively to the dice rolls. They're still very dice roll heavy, but they are less so and more you only need d6s to run them kind of thing. Similar systems to that are the Forge in the Dark games. So Blades in the Dark, Mountain Blade, and whatever their future one, because I always forget that one. But those are super roleplay heavy. They are super punishing for the players, and they're really simple because all you need are d6s. Rolls are good, rolls are bad. Generally, they're going to be bad, and your characters are going to have a bad time because you're playing not so great characters, so on and so forth. But the role play stuff, if all you want to do is role play and act and so on and so forth, and say this is what I would do, and then you see how it works, those are great systems for those. They're really simple. To kind of bounce off that into the futuristic setting of Lancer, Lancer steals some of the emotional side for the roleplay settings, and then combines them with the we'll call it clunky or chunky dice rolling system for the combats and things that they do in the mech. So Lancer is a mech-based TTRPG that you're running around in a big old robot, causing havoc in whatever form your havoc is. And it's one of my favorite currently. It's on our YouTube channel. We've been running one for a while now, and it is so much fun. You know, the battles themselves are great, and then the roleplay itself is very similar to Blades in the Dark, and I love that for roleplay stuff. Let me jump on my list here and actually read some of those off, though. So starting at number 10, Vampire the Masquerade, right? Focuses on the world of vampires and other supernatural creatures in a modern setting. So this is one of the ones that translates over to LARPing really well, because there is a ton of LARP that is based off Vampire the Masquerade that originally came from the TTRPG, and some of it is direct crossover from one to the other. So if you're into LARPing, that's a good transition one to kind of jump into TTRPGs, or vice versa. If you're trying to get into LARPing and want to find something, there's generally a group of Vampire the Masquerade yahoos running around somewhere in your city. Next is GURP, which stands for Generic Universal Role Playing System. And this is the plug and play, do whatever the heck you want to do system that is really, really open. So like it has generic rules, but that is about it. There are things that you can upgrade, and there's suggestions on the style of running it, but there aren't really modules for it. It is all freeform stories from whoever is crafting the DM side of things or GM side of things. It is a lot of fun, but it is a big old slap to the face when you're just trying to learn it, because it's like, here's a small rule book. Good luck, ha ha ha, and you go from there. Fate is known for its narrative focus and flexible rules. It can be adapted to various series and genres, and its dice system is really simple, if I remember correctly. Uh, Again, relatively easy to learn, but I wouldn't recommend it for younger kids just because it is very open and there's not a lot of focus unless that is how you DM. Call of Cthulhu, right, is a classic horror game based on H.P. Lovecraft's work. It emphasizes sanity and cosmic horror. So if you're one of those people that like the dark, gritty, your characters are going to go crazy, this is the game for you. It's lots of fun. You're never going to win. There's no winning in this game, unfortunately. Just submitting to the cosmic horrors eventually, and you just see how long you can last. It's kind of like one of those you don't win, but you do better, a little better every time. One of those style games. Savage Worlds, known for its flexibility and cinematic gameplay. It can be adapted to various genres, from sci-fi to fantasy. I've heard it done a lot in sci-fi, and it's really, really good for you telling the DM what the heck you're doing, and then you roll to see how well you do it. So it is very, very fun for, I take a dude, grab him by the hands, and kick him in the knees or something while you're in combat and doing stuff. So like being creative in that system is rewarded with successes or extreme failures if you roll bad. Let's see here. The Cyberpunk 2020 that just re-released, or the red version, is a dystopian future where players take on the roles of hackers, mercenaries, and rebels, dealing with whatever city you're in. If you guys have seen the Cyberpunk 2077, that is where that gained a lot of inspiration from. That's another video game that people play. It's heck, I think they're doing a big DLC release for that relatively soon, which is super exciting. But the role playing game is lots of fun. It's a little chunky for those of you that like chunk. Thumbs up. It feels much closer to Pathfinder and Starfinder than D&D, but it's still good. Speaking of Starfinder, if you're into sci-fi, science fiction, and space adventure, this one is a fantastic alternative. It is Pathfinder in space, is the easiest way to think of it. It's not quite a direct translation, but it's really, really close. The biggest changes are the races. But even in the rules of Starfinder, you can go to Pathfinder and make a Pathfinder character and put them in space. It's an allowed rule. The stuff translates really easily. They have conversion kits for it. It's lots of fun. We did a series on it on YouTube. It's finished, been done for a while. We only did one arc, I think. And then our players had to escape because of scheduling issues. But it's there if you guys want to learn how to do the basics. We went from like level 1 to 5. Let's say that. Let's see here. Shadowrun is a unique blend of cyberpunk and fantasy, where players take on the role of mercenaries in a dystopian future. Again, this is a more of a mission-based TTRPG, so for those of you that like the condensed stories, it's really fun. If you're into the dystopian setting and dealing with the hackers and cyberpunky stuff, great game. Um, Call of Cthulhu is twice on my list for some reason. Uh, Apparently, it's so good it gets 2 entries. That or I was crazy the first time. But another one to replace that one that we have found is Legend of the Five Rings, which is a role play heavy wannabe Japan TTRPG. Is silly way to say it, to say the least. It is where you're focusing to be a samurai or some kind of noble of higher class in a very similar society to what Japan was during the feudal eras, and playing through the storylines like that. There's 5 houses that you run through, and your decisions and actions are based on the theory of the 5 rings, um, which is slightly explained in the TTRPG itself. But if you haven't read the book, I suggest finding it and picking it up. It's an interesting theory and uh, way of living and whatnot. Uh, it helps categorize a lot of stuff. It's lots of fun. Combat can be brutal in it for both the characters and the enemies you're playing with. Um, there's going to be a lot of rule bending because it's a pain in the butt, but there's a lot of interesting systems like the intrigue, where you're not necessarily fighting with swords and knives, but your words and actions. So if you need a TTRPG that you are sitting in a court and having an argument, or want to try one of those out, so you're not just murder hoboing everybody in front of you, it's a great system for that. And before we get to the number one competitor with D&D, I'm also going to bring up Fantasy Flight's Star Wars TTRPG. It is unique in the sense that uses completely separate dice. Like, it still uses D12s and D6s and that kind of stuff that are used in all the other games, but it instead of having numbers on them, has symbols, and the symbols subtract and add and all kinds of other stuff for you to be creative with what happens. Obviously, there's still math involved for the weapons it uses and how much damage people take and the health they have and stuff like that. But it is much more story based than chunky numbers based. Obviously, the dice pools have their own set of math that you get to learn and get used to. But it's lots of fun. It and Legend of the Five Rings are actually very similar because they're both made by Fantasy Flight. And Legend of Five Rings, jumping back to that, also does not use numbers for the most part. It uses symbols. They're different systems, so you don't have to interlock them, but you could. The Fantasy Flight stuff is also similarly based on a Genesis system, which I believe Fate might borrow some stuff from as well, jumping back to Fate. But I'm going to cut off that and get to our top thing here, which is Pathfinder. For those of you that don't find D&D mathy enough, Pathfinder is your way to go. If you feel like I have not done enough math on my turn and don't care about roleplay as much and just want to do numbers, that is your game. It's a great game. It's lots of fun. You can still do all the fun adventuring stuff that you would do in like a normal D&D setting, but it is way more focused on the numbers, and the numbers matter much more. Both from your weapons, what you can do, all that fun stuff is laid out. There are rules for everything. If you need something with lots of structure, that is the way to go. If you're kind of more of a free brain that likes to do their own things, I suggest sticking with D&D. But Pathfinder is excellent for having rules for just about every situation. Going back to Starfinder is very much the same, except for it's in space. But those are just some of the alternates. If anyone else has thoughts and opinions, Paradox, if you have other games to throw out or descriptions of the ones you already said, I'm happy to listen to those and read those off. But those were the top 10. I'm gonna do a couple things and pull up a couple more. But now that I've talked for the last 10 minutes, questions, comments, concerns, ideas, things that caught your eye. What sounded fun to you as someone who hasn't played any of these?
I'm thinking about this Pathfinder that you're talking about that includes more math.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking about it for my son because he loves math. And as much as he likes D&D, I think maybe that might be a good option for him. The Pathfinder.
Pathfinder is lots of fun, like I said before, and it's based more on 3.5 because it was made by the people who helped build D&D's 3.5. They broke off because they didn't want to go in the next generation. They started their own company called Piezo, and they're on their second edition of their own game. But yes, no, it's a fantastic thing, especially for rules and structure and all that. The books are thick, um, comparatively to most TTRPGs. So like I got a miniaturized version, so it uses very tiny print of Starfield, and it is 500 and something pages worth of information and notes, and that doesn't even include any of the monsters or any of the other important stuff that you would need to play. I mean, it includes some of the monsters and whatnot, but not as many as all the other books that they have for Starfinder currently. And
So
speaking
it's
of,
it's
I
pretty
heard.
much set up. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No. I can
It
interject later.
it's set up like the D&D system. It's just you go about it differently. There are just more rules to it.
Yeah, more or less. So it uses the same dice, and lots of TTRPGs use the same dice sets. Again, Legend of the Five Rings and Star Wars kind of being outliers in that category. Um, but usually they use D20s, D6s, D8s, all that fun stuff that you use for your various TTRPGs and stuff. The only difference is there is more rules, and as you level up, there's more abilities that you can use, or stuff adds up differently. Whereas D&D gets you like every level you get something. In Pathfinder, you might have to adjust like 10 things on your character sheet because you leveled up, instead of just like
Mm.
three. Yeah, D&D you upgrade your
Oh,
health, you upgrade your any character abilities or spells you might have, um, and if you're lucky, every once in a while you'll upgrade your skills. Pathfinder, Starfinder, every level you're upgrading some kind of skill in some way. You're upgrading several abilities, you're changing your stats. It's much more progressive in building and whatnot. Excuse me. And a great example is the strongest weapon in D&D for 5th edition is a +3 something. If something is a +3 in D&D 5e, it is super, super powerful. You shouldn't find any weapons that are more strong or have extra abilities. And, the +3s have really cool stuff that they do as well. But numbers wise, you're only adding +3 to your character's stuff. Pathfinder has up to like +10, or
mm.
higher, depending on where you're at and what you're doing. So the math is just different. There's more. You can get +30 or 40 on something, and that be a reasonable roll, comparatively to D&D. If you roll above a 20, you're succeeding and winning at whatever the heck you're trying to do for the most part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay. So I pulled up a couple others, and funny enough, most of them actually got brought up already. But one of them is Mutants and Masterminds is a design for superhero themed campaigns and offers a robust system for creating and playing superheroes and villains. So if you're looking to kind of have a Marvel esque party, that's a great system to do. I think they're on their third iteration of it online at this point. I don't know how many physical books they have for it, but they've done quite a few iterations, so it's pretty well defined at this point. I played with
What is
my
that called again?
Mutants and Masterminds.
Mutants and Masterminds. Okay, I gotta write this down. My daughter would love that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I played that a couple years ago with family members, or at least main characters. I don't think we actually ever started stories. So we had one or two sessions and with just character building. So it was lots of fun. I think I made a werewolf dude that was also a cop, so that was funny. Let's see. We have Dungeon World that combines the elements of traditional fantasy RPGs with a narrative-driven gameplay that makes great for storytelling. So it's one of those games that uses dice, but way less than D&D, and is way more about the storytelling and the interaction, and you describe how you do stuff, comparatively to letting the dice tell you how things happen.
Mm.
Let's see what
Okay.
else they got for us. Numera is a set in a far future Earth that blends science fiction and fantasy elements, focusing on exploration and discovery. I have personally not played this one. I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it, unfortunately. And then One that I have in my house, but not in my room currently, is the Dune TTRPG, or the Firefly TTRPG, or the Fallout TTRPG. All those are done by Modius Studios or Modius Publishing, and there are two D20 systems that focus on the uh, franchises on TV and whatnot. They're super fun. They take all the lore from the shows and whatnot and put them into stories. Generally, the main books have one or two stories or campaigns built into them. And then you kind of just take them from there as if you're living in the world running one of those characters. It's lots of fun. They have stuff for Star Trek too, if I remember correctly. Um,
Hmm.
I'm still currently learning that. I'm about halfway through the book because I've had it for a year and been busy or something. It's like running a business doesn't give me a lot of reading time. But
Yeah, imagine that.
um, it's Dune itself, the one I have read, is lots of fun. Keeps you on your toes. It feels true to the lore if you guys have read any of the books. It's right online with that. It tells you the history or the history the simplest way it possibly can, so you can set your settings in the right places and things, and then play the story however you will. You're not necessarily going to be the savior of humanity, John, but you could be someone similar in your storytelling and whatnot. And then one of the fun ones that I want to bring up last minute would be the Power Rangers TTRPG. This is on my wish list on Amazon because I had it in a bookstore recently, and it disappeared on me. I didn't buy it in time. I was super sad. But it focuses on the Power Rangers, right? And more of the comic style. So it's a little bit more adult themed than the kids' TV show. But the game focuses on building your mechs and running around doing combat stuff as the Power Rangers and getting their upgrades and whatnot as they get better and do things. If I remember correctly, it focuses mostly on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers generation. But to my knowledge, it can expand to the stuff that came later and before. I shouldn't say before the Mighty Morphin was the first one, but whatever. Uh, but the stuff that comes afterwards, I think it has some of the stuff for that, or they have expansions for it. I don't remember if the core rulebook itself has that. But if you're a Power Rangers fan and you need something that isn't DND, that's going to take a bit of learning to catch up on the fun lore that's attached to it, bada bing, bada boom. That's an excellent way to go. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of one that is less um, storytelling based that is or is less known. We'll say Tales from the Loop. Ah, this is a great one. So this is really fun. You're playing as kids. Think Stranger Things is kind of the feel to it. So you're playing
Yeah.
not teenagers but children dealing with monsters and craziness in their own town. And one of the cool things about this system is you can't kill the kids. They don't die. They just get knocked out. So nothing super terrible can happen to them. Um, but it kind of gives that youthful vibe, and it's all about their successes and their challenges and so on and so forth. And then after that is Into the Breach, which is a very similar thing, except for it's with the teenage versions, and it is much darker. You can die. Your all your stuff is about the negativities of your character instead of the positive aspects, and focuses more on like that teen angst feelings. It is still very narrative driven, but is much more focused on the growing and getting the things and overcoming challenges on both ends, as both a teenager and a child, depending on what story you're running. But those are both
Hmm.
really fun that aren't necessarily super crazy. Mouse Guard is another great one based on the graphic novel series. It's about anthropomorphic mice protecting their territories in a medieval setting. So if you want to play a mouse fighting snakes or other mice, great system to try. I have a friend that swears by this one. Um, super fun. Travelers is a classic space opera RPG that focuses on science fiction and exploration on the vast universe. It's way more ship focused than necessarily in person, but it's like you're traveling on the ship and then you're doing stuff as a character. So it can be very excuse me, can be very mission centric when you're doing stuff. Monster of the Week is designed for supernatural and paranormal investigations, inspired by TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Supernatural. It is very much an episodic, what are we dealing with this week or this month or whatever,
Hmm.
and how do we handle it? Again, if you love Buffy the Vampire Supernatural. Those are great examples and places to steal ideas from and push forward. Let's see. RuneQuest is known for its detailed world building and unique magic system. It's set in the high fantasy worlds of Gothera. I've heard good things about it. I have not personally played it myself. And yeah, I think those 15 or 20 things that we talked about was probably plenty. I'm gonna jump back to you one more time for questions, ideas, concerns.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, and all of those that you mentioned, there's so many different aspects to them, but like the characters, you create the characters in all of them because some of them sound like the characters are already there for you.
So generally on TTRPGs in general, that's half the fun is character creation, especially as a player, is you get to make a unique person that is for that setting. Even if it's stuff like we'll say Star Trek, for example, right? You can build a
Right.
captain or an ensign or something that's basically Captain Picard or Kirk, but they're not necessarily going to be those characters. You're not stepping into those roles and running those people. You'll just be running someone like them. You won't be flying the Enterprise itself. You'll be flying something very similar. It could be the exact same model of ship, but it won't be the Enterprise. It'll be the Interstellar or something silly like that. And that's pretty much the same across the board with all these TTRPGs. And TTRPGs in general is you are crafting a character that is unique to you and your world, and going from there. Some of them, like D&D, might have canonical stories that are modules built by the people who made the books. But in general, everything is going to be unique. You might run across characters that are canon or shared across multiple universes or tables or stories, but that doesn't mean that they are set in stone for how they interact or how they deal. All of it's going to be uniquely to the tables that you play with, and that's across
That
the
makes a
board for
lot of
any of
sense.
those games.
I see. Yeah, and like, that's part of where the creativity would come in is coming up with the character that you want. And I would think that a lot of people would build the character off of themselves, but they may not.
Well,
Um,
talking about burnout, right? Sometimes
right.
that's the easiest way to step into a character in a new system to start is build yourself and go from there. But someone who's been playing something for a long time might have a character class that they're always playing. Like we'll say warlocks in D&D. Always a warlock, always a tiefling, always picks up a bow, and that's their cool weapon that they use. And the stories are just different from whatever, but that's their thing, right? And so they're just tired of playing that. Well, then they switch to one of these other systems. We'll say Monster of the Week, and that's not even an option. You can't be a tiefling. You got to be a normal dude with a gun. So it forces you out of your comfort zone to kind of again progress and learn and get better. Um, so uh, you could just build yourself, right? That's really easy in most of the systems. There is some way, like, for the exception of games like Mouse Guard. I can't make myself as a mouse too well.
Yeah.
But you take personality traits. There's a saying, you always put something of yourself in every one of your characters. Whether it's
Yeah.
your eyes, your ears, your hair, how you interact with things, whatever, right? Um, but that varies, especially on experience level. For new players, that is a very common way to build characters, and that's totally fine. You can have great stories pretending you're in the land of adventure, causing havoc, doing whatever the heck you want, carefree or very careful. Who knows? Depends on how you play your stuff. But that is a great way to go about it, is build yourself in whatever system you're trying to play.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, if I was to jump in there, that's probably what I would do first thing is, because I wouldn't know anything else. But after you get in there, it would make sense to kind of, like you said, switch around a little bit and try other characters. I mean, I'm just thinking about how much you can learn from all this. Like, these are really educational games. They
Yep.
can really be
Yep. Yep.
for
Yep.
life. Like,
Yes, they're fantastic for that. For again, one of our people that we talk to on a semi-regular basis is homeschool parents and whatnot. For some of that, it's tax writable because of all the math and stuff. They can use it as a elective credit, more or less. So that's what some people
wow.
use it for. It's super fun that way because you're spending time playing games and you're learning the whole time. You're doing some kind of math. You're doing some kind of social setting. You're learning something fun about stories and writing and so on and so forth, right? So it is super useful for kids of an appropriate age. And the best part is the kids of an appropriate age. There are systems set for younger kids. Us ourselves are currently working on one for ages 5 to 12. I mean, that's the focus of who it's going for, so they can play at a simpler level and still have their fun adventuring stuff. There's a My Little Pony TTRPG, right? It's the My Little Pony universe. You're running around as one of the fancy ponies, or your version of a fancy pony, and it's meant for little girls, right? It's a TTRPG specifically meant for them, but playable by everyone else. Um,
Right.
and I've heard it's lots of fun. I've personally not played it, but I've heard it lots of fun. And it's great for involving those little kids. So if you have a niece or nephew that's really excited and wants to roll dice with you, maybe that's a system you pick up. D&D is great, and the current edition isn't super hard. If you can help the child read, and they can roll numbers and do basic math that is adding up to stuff under 20, they can also just play D&D. You obviously tone down the adult themes or whatever else you need to make the table feel appropriate for a 6-year-old or 10-year-old or whoever. But that's the wonderful thing about these systems is they are changeable to whatever audience you're playing for, or playing with or whatnot.
It makes me wonder, like, because my son's 13, he loves math, and I'm thinking, I wonder if that Pathfinder would be more appropriate for him.
It's either here nor there. They're both great systems. It's really just how much
Yeah.
he, as a player, cares about following rules. If he's someone
Okay.
that likes to have structure and have examples and rules for every little thing that you can think of, Pathfinder is excellent for that. My business partner,
Okay.
Younger, excels at Pathfinder. Um, Whereas D&D is a little bit more free, a little more open. You're allowed to craft and create things, um, because it's just not as detailed. There's still plenty of stuff to it. There's plenty of stories and things like that that they've crafted for it, but they are way more freedom of choice for how you interpret things, and so on and so forth. And some of the other TTRPGs are really light on the rules and things. They kind of just give you roll this dice for this situation, roll this dice for this situation, and that's it. And then other ones have list out every possible scenario, everything that you'll need, so on and so forth. And finding that is a big part of the learning process, right? And why people are so generally afraid of finding a new TTRPG and they stick to D&D for years at a time, besides the fact that they might just really like it. They don't want to learn something new because of all the fancy new rules you got to learn. But if you
Right.
can learn D&D, you can learn any of these other ones. There's nothing that is too
Oh,
complicated that you can't pick up eventually. If you have a good DM, bonus. But learning them yourselves, even if you're just like character crafting or something like that to get you out of your D&D funk, it's a great way to express yourself. Oh, hey, look, we got someone talk. Oh, never mind. It's a bot. I'm so
I was
excited.
just
There's
gonna
a really
say,
long comment. Woohoo!
yeah, I have learned so much tonight. Just listening to you, it's been really helpful for me. I just want you to know that this has been really good.
Well, I will throw the compliment back. It was wonderful hearing your story in full this time. And I thank you for being here. I would say to the people that are watching,
Of
you
course.
guys got any questions, comments, concerns for our guest? You can type them up in the chat, uh, real quick, and then we'll do our last minute stuff and things, and I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about your stuff before we escape, because we are almost at the hour mark. We got about 6 minutes, so I'm
All
going to
right.
give you guys a minute to send messages either in chat on Discord or on the Twitch, and then we'll ask and go from there. Actually, better system. I'm gonna let you do your stuff first and tell where we can find you, what you do, or well, we know what you do, but where we can find you, stuff that you're working on, all that fun stuff. And then if they have any questions, we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. My website is www.polishthemirror.com, like polishthemirror.com. I am currently working on a book to share my story about how you can find your own hero within, because that's what I've been able to do through Life with a Broken Neck. I do inspiration and motivational speaking. I also offer clean, anti-aging, smudge-proof cosmetics and skincare that doesn't smudge or smear and is good for your skin. So I got a little bit of everything going on. It's like I
I feel
couldn't do
that.
anything for so long. Now I'm doing a little bit of everything. Just enjoying life.
Nice, nice. Well, I don't see anything on the chat, so I'll try and wrap up on our side. We have an event tomorrow and Sunday, where we'll be up at the Canine fundraiser up here in North Pole. We will be there from 10 to 8, 9 to 8, somewhere around there. It's on our event on our Discord, so check that out. The code for this month for the 10% off all the stuff and things on the website is, I gotta remember it. No. Yeah, I'll type it up later. I forgot what it is. It's not Caesar 907. What month are we in? We're in September.
Yeah.
Huh. I know I just redid it the other day, and now I can't think of what it is. That's the worst. Anyway, sorry for this later. Hopefully, when I'm recording the end of this, I will type it out in the description. Anyway, speaking of description, if I will make sure there are links and fun stuff to Amy's things, so you can find her later. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. Any last thoughts, comments, opinions before we escape?
I just thank you for having me on here. It's been really, really helpful and informative, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Again, we're so glad to have you, and again, sharing the thank you for having us on the other day. We do really appreciate that.
Of course.
10 seconds. I might have found the thing. Nope, never mind. All right, I'll type it in later. I gotta go on the website and make sure I got it right. Anyway, with adventure in mind, have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you.
I can find the music button over here. Jeez.